Welcome back, Lesley. It's such a treat to see you.
Thank you, Kimberly. I'm so happy to be here.
We started chatting before recording, and yeah, I think it is number three.
Yeah, wow. I wonder what year was the first one.
I'm not sure, but I know I met you in '07,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Oh, wow. Yes, it was right. Because I was new to New York and new to listening to podcasts. And I had come across Hip Tranquil Chick in the yoga section, I think, of
Yeah.
podcasts. What is this? And I got hooked.
And here we are, like almost 20, is it 20?
Yeah,
Almost 20
almost
years
20 years,
later.
like 18.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
I feel like I've known you, like I've watched you grow up. Do you know what I mean?
Mhm.
And so tell me a little bit about your journey and reflections on life as you've traversed into midlife, right? Because when I knew you, you were a Girl Scout. And then since then, you've written how many books? You've done so many things in the art world in New York.
Yeah, it's really interesting because I was like thinking about like our journey together this morning and like how thankful I am to have found the podcast and found you and those like wonderful retreats because actually like I was like 28 maybe. And I remember thinking, oh my gosh, when I turn 30, like I want to be more creative. Like I'm a creator, not an office person. And I had done that for almost 10 years. And I was just like really looking for an outlet or something to connect to help me unleash that part of myself. And so when I started listening to your podcast and like I remember you talking about like I think how you started the studio in your apartment like back in the day. And it was just so inspiring to hear you talk about starting something from the ground up and then having it grow into the studio that you had. I don't know. Like, I was just like, oh my gosh, like, I feel like maybe there's something that I can do too. Like, I didn't know what it was at the time. I don't even think I knew that I was like into fashion, but like, I had never made a vision board and we're at the retreat and I was like, oh, maybe I'll start a blog. And just like all these like light bulbs like started going off for me. And there are so many cool, like-minded women who were there, who some of them I'm still in contact with today, which is amazing. And so I think that was like really one of the pivotal things that opened me up to having the courage to try to be myself full time. And so I think after 2 years of continuing to follow you and feeling more confident in my creativity. Like I left my full-time job and I haven't had one since. So yeah, that led me to when I first left Girl Scouts, my undergrad degree is in education. And so I thought, oh, like I should just teach kids how to sew because like I knew how to sew from sewing with my mom growing up. And so I like bought a sewing machine on Craigslist and just re-familiarized myself with everything. And back to Craigslist again, I just started looking at all the ads for gigs. And there was one to teach a 13-year-old girl how to sew because she wanted to make a dress for a school dance or something. So I like applied. They instantly hired me because of the blog that I had, The Creative Cookie, and because my work in Girl Scouts and I had a degree in education. So her name was Cassie, who now I think she's graduated from college, but she had all these questions. So I was like, oh, let me go to Borders, which is not even around anymore, and see if they have a fashion book that I can use. And then couldn't find one that I liked. And so I'm like, oh my God, I'm gonna have to write a book. So this was like how it just all snowballed from there. And fast forward, I've had studios or I've taught classes of people to sew, and I've written 5 books. And then I'm like really zipping forward quickly. And then coming out of the pandemic, I answered an ad for this thing called Storefront Startup. And I've always really been interested in retail and fashion. And I was like, oh, let me apply for this. They're probably not going to pick me. And the next day they call and they're like, we love the concept that you created. And so that was how Art to Wear was born, which is my kind of wearable art gallery that I have two locations right now here in New York. And so that's been my main thing for the last 3 years. But I'm still doing some teaching. I just turned in another book proposal to my agent. So hopefully that comes through. So I think writing books is the one thing that I know I want to do forever. But now I'm like getting that like itch of what's next. So
Love it, Lesley. It's so interesting to hear your journey. And I remember you sitting on the floor in that old farmhouse in New York and having so many dreams and so many interests. And now to see the evolution, it's such a treat to observe. And it's so fun to have been part of your journey through this. 5 books, honey. And you just turned in number six's proposal.
yeah. So it's yeah, I'm like, how did that happen? Yeah, 5 books in 10 years. Because the first one came out in 2015, and that was So Fab Sewing and Style for Young Fashionistas. And I was just so happy to have that book deal because like at the time, like I think I had 200 Instagram followers because Instagram was so new. There are probably 15 people reading my blog. I was just like, no publisher's gonna give me a book deal. And they did. And then I thought that would be the only book that I would have a chance to write. So I was like, let me just throw everything that I have into this because I don't know if I'm going to get this chance again. And they're like, please calm down. We think there's 2 books here. So that was how I got the second book deal because they're like, this is just like too much. And so I wrote Style File or My Fab Fashion Style File, but I just call it Style File because I think it's like shorter and cuter and easier to say. So that was the second one. And then there were, yeah, 3 others like after that that just all like magically happened. So I'm really thankful to be able to continue to do what I love and share my ideas about fashion and creativity and sewing and style.
What would you say to midlife women listening who are like, I'm curious about creativity, sewing, fashion, and style, right? Is there any sort of advice that you would give for someone who wants to like get more in touch with their own style and maybe even do a little DIY at this time in life?
Yeah, I would just say just go for it. You know what I mean? Like it's not too late. Like I get a lot of women who like come into my store and they're like, I love this, but I'm gonna bring my daughter or like even my granddaughter. And I'm like, no, like this is for you. You don't have to feel like you can't do it or try it or like it. Like I just like really encourage them to like try it on. And if it's too much or not enough, what can you do with what you already have to create more of a impact with your wardrobe? And yeah, I would just say go for it, try it, sign up for a class, buy a book, get on Creative Bug. There's just so many ways, YouTube, so many ways to learn this skill. And it's just never too late. You just have to carve out the time to do it. Like I want to take DJ lessons. And so I'm like really pushing myself to make time to do it and not be afraid of all the technical stuff and not having rhythm and like all these things I'm like worrying about in my head, like being like 46 and like trying to DJ. I'm like, I have always wanted to do this. So I'm just gonna see what happens. And if I don't like it, it's okay, but at least I'll know. So I would just say take the dive, go for it, try to figure it out. And you're probably gonna love it if you have that inkling that you want to do it. So don't be afraid to try.
You know, it's funny. One person I interviewed on the show, and you may know Jamie Ridler, but she is lovely and she just went through DJ school in her
Oh, did
50s.
she?
So, yeah.
Oh my
So
gosh,
check
I'm
her
gonna have to
out.
like look her up. I just want to
Yeah.
be able to like make like playlists for the stores and maybe do a 15-minute set at a party. Like nothing too crazy, but yeah, okay. So that's like inspiring. So I'm actually taking a class Sunday night, like my first DJ class. So
Very cool. I love it. Yeah, and she said she was worried she'd be like one of the older people in there, and she said she wasn't. And it sounds like she's gotten a really great community out of it. So I can't wait to hear about yours.
okay, stay tuned.
Tell me, Lesley, about because there's been a lot of evolution for you. So how have you embraced change? Because change is quite disorienting for a lot of people. So what are some ways that you've worked to really embody being grounded with so much in transition?
Yeah, that is, I think, a big word for my life. I feel like it's just always been in transition. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like when does it get easier? And I think in some ways it is because like I'm getting smarter and I'm like learning more about myself and like how not to like push myself too far or go off the rails by maintaining more of a mental space and physical space and just like making sure my central nervous system is okay. So I think for me, it's been about like finding like more inner peace and what makes me like happy and keeps me going. And that has really helped me navigate like all the like changes and twists and turns that I feel like are, constantly coming my way. And rather than being like, oh my gosh, this is so hard, I'm just like, okay, got through that one. Like, how do I just prepare myself for whatever is coming next so that I don't not fall apart, but I think my first divorce was like very like hard for me. And I had 6 months. I think we talked about this last time I was on the podcast, where I was like only going to therapy and meeting with my cousin Brett and like dressing up once a week to go out and get a coffee was like my thing during that time. And so like I never want to go back to that place again. So it's been like a lot of therapy, a lot of figuring out like where I need to be and position myself to just stay calm. So when change does come, I'm not completely blindsided and I can just roll through it in a way that feels like I'm in control as much as I can.
Mhm. Yeah, it's not easy.
No, it's not. Last year, like my father passed away. He was 90. So it was to be expected. It's just still hard losing a parent, and I'm an only child. And so it was just like, all right, like, how do you plan all these things around his death? And I still have thank you cards to send out. Like, my mom is like, your aunt said she didn't get her thank you card yet. So I'm gonna like work on that today. But it's just so much. And so I'm also just like giving myself the time and the grace and the room to just do things when I feel like doing them. Because I also think if I like pressure cook myself, that doesn't feel good and it's like not helpful. So I'm like, they're gonna get it. It's been a year. I'm sorry, but it's gonna get done. But I just like I'm just juggling so much. Sometimes you just have to do what you feel like doing, like in that moment, or what you can get done. And yeah, so it's
Yeah.
like I'm like approaching things in midlife.
Yeah, that's what I'm hearing from a lot of women, where it's typically, I would say, it has to get out in 1 week, right? Or
Mhm.
whatever are the standards that maybe we've held for ourselves over the years. And now it's like, it'll get out when it gets out, right? I'm going to get it done. It'll happen, or maybe not, but I'm going to
Yeah.
really focus on me, right? And my energy and resources at this time.
Yeah. And for me now too, I'm like, I know that my like intention is good. And I just feel like people could be like a little kinder sometimes. I'm like, do you really want that thank you card? Or maybe I'll do something different, just calling them. Some people have just been doing a phone call or a little email. And I know it's not as tangible as a handwritten thing, but I do acknowledge it and I appreciate it. But I'm just one little person like trying to figure out like so many different things with like the two shops and just everything that's like happening. Sometimes you just can't fit it all in. And I feel like my energy is like a little different. And so
Mhm.
that's been like a fun thing to figure out and navigate. So here we are. Like, but it's fun. I think I like it.
Yeah, the energy is definitely a piece that I'm hearing from a lot of
Mhm.
women also. And how do you juggle that? Because our energy is not what it was when we met in our 20s and 30s, when we could take on the world or we felt we could. And now it's, oh, can I get that thank you note that I wanted to get a year ago? Can I get that out today? We're just different. And not that we don't still want to do a lot, because I definitely am hearing that from you. But yet it's like recognizing that the degree of energy that we had is just not quite the same. Would you agree? Like physically noticing changes?
Yeah, definitely. I feel like as soon as I like turned 46, there's like a switch that just somebody, because I'm like, what is like happening? Like, I just don't have as much. Oh, I don't have as much energy. And so I'm like, also, I like recently moved and I'm like a block away from the subway, which has been like game changing. Cause like before it was like a little bit of a walk, which was fine, but that also meant if I wanted to do something at night, like I probably wasn't doing it because I don't want to come home so late. And so now being close to the subway allows me to come home, maybe take a little nap and then get up and go back out. Or I don't feel like, I have to like get an Uber everywhere. I don't know, just like putting myself in proximity to the subway is like a 30-minute ride to one of the stores, which has been like really great instead of an hour. So I'm just like trying to like position myself to match my energy, which has been like really a fun challenge and helpful in me, like still being able to do as much as I want to do without feeling too tired or like I'm like stretching myself too thin. Cause I'm like, I want to do all the things because I feel like that's how you stay young and like active. But then it's also, I have to be realistic.
Yeah, I love that. The recognizing that just a small shift, it's not a small shift to adjust where you live. It's a big shift to be like, oh, I want to be closer, right? I want to make things easier. I want to be able to come home and nap or whatever it might be. It makes a really big difference. So I'm proud of you. Is there
Yeah.
anything else as you think about physically, Lesley, that has shifted for you? And you're like, when I turned 46, it was like things just shifted.
Yeah. I feel like I'm like eating a little differently too, which is because I think we were both like vegetarian. I was like pescatarian and you were vegetarian. I don't know if you still are, but I remember
Yeah.
going out for cheesesteaks. And yeah, so we were, yeah. Anyway, now I feel like I need a little bit of meat, which is weird. I have a burger once a month, which has been delightful. But for many years, like I think 15 years, like I was like completely pescatarian and now I'm like slowly like introducing like a little more meat protein because like my iron levels have been like low. So like, one thing I think diet is changing. Like I have to have breakfast now, which is something that I used to skip religiously. I would be like, oh, I'm gonna have a cup of coffee and maybe a granola bar. But now every morning I have to eat something. Another thing, I'm just seeing so many things. I some mornings have to get up and just go for a walk because I just be in bed. I don't want to get up. Because I'm not a morning person, first and foremost. But now it's like really hitting me that I shouldn't be getting up until 10 a.m. But I have to get up at 8:30 or 9 to be like a productive adult. But I'll get up and just take a walk and get my coffee because that like really gets me like more awake. Where I think before I would be like, oh, like I'm just gonna stay inside and be warm. But it's like taking a nice walk, especially now because it's like autumn and I really love the leaves and the sun like on my skin. And so I'll just walk out and get coffee and buy croissants and like olives and cheese. Like it's $30 every morning when I leave the house and like snacks. But it's fun. And so and it wakes me up and then I can come back and work. So that's like another thing I'm noticing too, is just like waking up is I just want to like nest and oh no. Sorry. And so that's another thing too. So there's been like a lot of little changes, but I am again having fun figuring it out.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's about learning to adapt, right? And to see what works for you now, recognizing just because it worked 10 years ago doesn't mean it's going to work now.
Yeah, I'm also learning about this is weird, or maybe not makeup. I never knew I had maybe a tinted moisturizer. I've always had to wear pressed powder because I have really oily skin. But now I'm like watching YouTube videos about like how to apply makeup because I'm like, maybe there's some tricks in there that will help me. I don't know. I just feel like in having more of a skincare regimen is something I've like never done either. So I'm like learning more and like testing out oils and moisturizers and, going to Sephora and like asking questions because I'm like, I should probably get some eye cream, like start using sunscreen, like just all these things that I've been like, oh, like I don't, need to do that. Now I'm like trying to take care of myself a bit more or just like figure out like what's out there because I've just been like a get up and go girl.
Yeah, it's so interesting you say that because I would say very similar for me during the pandemic. I was always like, you wash your face with Cetaphil because this was like, I think what my 16-year-old when I was 16, my dermatologist told me, and just wash your face with Cetaphil, moisturize with Eucerin over the counter, but more dermatological type skincare, right? So I did that forever. And then I don't know, I think it was Instagram ads during the pandemic, something, right? And I just got into, and I would use some face oils too. But then during the pandemic, I got into serums that you start with the vitamin C and then you do the this particular acid like that is very light. But then at night you have a retinol that's all in a serum. So it's not like really heavy. But I was like, oh my gosh, this is a whole process. And it's fun. But why did it
Yeah.
take me until the pandemic or you until like 40s, right? To be like, I should take care of my skin this way beyond what my dermatologist told me when I was 16.
Yeah, because that's what I was doing the same, like Neutrogena, like the little pads. Yeah, and I'm like, why did it take so long? Why was I using apricot scrub? That was probably too hard. Like all the 90s like product. When I would go to my dad's house, he still had Noxzema. And I'm like, ooh, is this poison? Like, yeah, why did it take so long? I don't know. But now I'm like, I'm doing it and it's fun. I think it like makes a difference. Like I'm like noticing. So yeah.
It's huge. How would you say, Lesley, especially since you said you're still in touch with people from that retreat that from
Mhm.
I think '07, and I think you came again in '08. You came 2 years. But what would you say with relationships, how they have shifted for you over the years? Because I remember one year you brought two friends of yours that I think were from
Yeah.
Girl Scouts, maybe.
Mhm.
But it's like our relationships change a lot as we age and as people, particularly in New York City and DC, it's very transitory. So I'm curious how yours have morphed and evolved over the years.
Yeah, I feel really lucky to have a core group of friends who I met, I would say around the time I met you in the late 20s, who I'm like still close to. I find that it's harder to meet new people as you get older, as we know, because it's people are busy, they have their lives. Like a lot of my people I meet have like children, like I don't. And so I think a lot of people who do make new friends, like maybe bond like at their kids' school or like over sports or whatever. So it's been interesting. I find that having a business has been really great. I'm like, if nothing else comes out of art to wear, like I have like this new like community of people that I've been able to connect with. And so it's like the same as I remember when I was in college, like I would see a girl with a cute outfit on and I'm like, oh my God, like I want to be friends with her or I'm gonna talk to her. So I feel like art to wear is like creating like that kind of space to be able to make relationships with like people and everybody has their little beat or like thing that they add to it. So I'm so thankful for that. But I will say relationships have changed a little and like some of the ones I thought like I would have forever like are gone or like they've changed. But I think social media makes it easy to like stay together. And was there Instagram at your retreat? I'm trying to remember even like
No,
I, yeah,
Facebook.
there was Facebook and maybe MySpace.
Friendster.
Yeah, I feel like it's Facebook was what maybe connected us. And then we became friends on Instagram. But yeah, I feel like relationships have changed. And I like recently I am a very non-confrontational person. And so I will avoid conflict at any cost. But I'm learning that sometimes it's not the way to be because then it can blow up if you just keep. So now I'm like learning how to get in the middle of things a little bit, even if it's like uncomfortable. It's like the other morning I was like in bed and I was like, I don't want to get up. Should I take a walk? And I realized I was like sitting there thinking about all these like conversations that I needed to have with people. And I just got up, I lit a candle, wrote a list, and I just went down that list. I set my timer for an hour and I was like, these are all people who like I care about and I want to maintain a relationship with, but I need to stop being afraid to say what I want to say to them because I'm afraid that it's going to hurt our business relationship or hurt our friendship. And so that was the first time I did that. And then I burned the list and the relationships are like okay. And like I'm glad like I did that. But it was just like my first time like being like, I need to stop being like, let me step back and be passive and this thing will figure itself out. So that's like another thing that I'm learning about myself and about relationships and just not being afraid for them to fall apart. But I feel like having conflict actually or addressing things like might even make them stronger if you can get through it. Yeah, that's a new thing because like again, 34-year-old Lesley, 29-year-old Lesley would have been like, oh, I don't want to say that or I'm afraid.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's really important of being able to ask for what you need and to set boundaries also, which is
Mhm.
so important and also a challenge, especially if you're conflict avoidance.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, what would you tell 16-year-old Lesley?
I have always like worried about stuff. I think it's part of being an only child. My parents just protected me so much. And so I just naturally, like, I'm very, like, I take a risk, obviously, but I'm not too out there because I'm like, oh, like, I'm afraid of what could happen. So I guess I would just tell her, like, stop worrying about so much. It's all going to work out. To a degree, I believe that the worry kept me in check and kept me in line. And something, because when I was in college, I was like, I'm not going out tonight because I need to finish my degree. Or it's always been this thing that like kept me in balance. But I think I did it a little bit too much in ways that didn't matter, worrying about what people thought about me, worrying about what people thought about what I was wearing, like just all of these things. And now I'm like, none of that really matters. And so I would just definitely tell her not to worry so much, like maybe half the worry, or not even half, like maybe a fourth of it was like good, but like the rest of it was just like a wasted brain energy that I could have been using for like creative projects or making things or helping people or like just being a better person. So now I've learned to just be like a little more worry free. And it feels like really good. So that's what I would
Yeah.
tell.
Yeah. So good. So important. Anything
Mhm.
else you want to share with our listeners about midlife in general before I ask you my last question?
Ooh, I would say just embrace it and love it and be kind to yourself as you're figuring it out. Like I'm assuming that it's gonna get easier. And it's not even that like hard right now, but like I just noticed like a really big shift. I'm turning 47 is like the next birthday, and I hear that's supposed to be like the roughest year of your 40s. I don't know why. I've just been seeing like these articles about it. So I'm like trying to set myself up for that not to be the case. So I like booked a trip to Miami for my birthday. And I'm just like, I'm gonna kick it off in a fun way to make sure that I'm not sad or depressed. And then I'm just going to ride that wave throughout the year. So I'm just like, I'm looking forward to this new version of myself where I feel like I'm fully like getting to step into who I am. And I just like hope everybody embraces it. Like I have this like cool group of friends who come to the store. One in particular, her name's Diana Gabriel, and she's gonna be 80 next month. And she just has the best style. And I remember when I first met her, I was like, she's a part of the advanced style community. And there are like all these ladies on Instagram who just dress up in the most coolest outfits and they just don't care. Like they're just so amazing. So I'm like, excited, that they're like paving the way for us to just be like in our 70s and 80s and still be fabulous, still be like out and living life and enjoying it. So I'm just like, I'm looking forward to it and learning all that I can. And I can't wait to see what happens.
Yes, love them. Advanced style. Check them out. Instagram, book, film, all the things.
Yeah, and it's like when we have events, like Diana will bring some of them to the store, and I'm just like, "What's your secret? Tell me more." I just love like talking to all of them. I feel so lucky because I like watched like one of the movies or something that they had like before like actually like meeting them, and I was like, "This is so cool." I've just always been like, I think, interested in like people who were like older than me too. I think maybe because my dad is almost 50, like when I was born, and he was like in his late 40s. And so I've just always connected with like people who are like a little older in a special way. And so I'm looking forward to being that person for young people and still being cool. So we'll see. But yeah, I would say just embrace it, have fun with it, figure it out, and keep trying new things.
Yeah, I think you are an inspiration for younger women. So you're doing that. Check. So, last question is the name of the podcast, Tranquility du Jour. So, how are you finding tranquility in your everyday? And I know you mentioned a few things getting up out of bed, having a good breakfast, a morning walk. Anything else come to mind?
Yeah, I feel like oh man, I think definitely all the rituals that you just mentioned, I talked about earlier. I think just really prioritizing peace and anything in my life that isn't as people, it can be things that I don't find that give me life, that give me like any kind of like that don't have a purpose. Like I'm just like getting rid of it. So it's like in my closet, it's in my just like very particular about like the energy that's like around me. And I just don't want, I want to be inspired and I want people, things, places like around me that feel like they're like uplifting me. And so I've been very strategic since I don't have as much energy to like deal with everything, to like just be sure that like I am just very careful about how I move in the world and like move in my space. And I'm right now trying to just, yeah, make a space that's like uplifting to me and just create this world like you have created your own like universe, which I just like love. And so now I'm in the process of doing that to the best extent that I can. And I think that is just the way forward for me. So that is how I'm finding tranquility, is just making sure everything around me brings joy and happiness as much as I can. Like all my coffee mugs are like my favorite coffee mugs. I'm not holding on to things that I don't like anymore because like why? So
Right.
that's been my thing for 46 that I think will just be with me for the rest of my life.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Lesley. It's so good to see you.
Kimberly, this was so much fun. And I'm so happy that the podcast is back. I love it.